I still remember the exact moment I knew my teaching career was over. I was laying in bed one night scrolling Facebook before going to sleep, and then I saw it. Someone had posted my name publicly and exposed something from my past that had happened years before I ever became a teacher. The second I saw that post, I knew. Not suspected, not feared, I knew. Everything was about to change. But to understand why that moment mattered so much, I need to back up a little. Earlier that year, in the spring of 2016, I had been called into human resources because of an anonymous tip. Someone had informed the school district that years before becoming a teacher, I had appeared in adult content. I remember sitting there wondering if my career was about to end. Instead, I received a completely different message. I was told that I had done nothing wrong. The district acknowledged that this was something from my past, before my teaching career ever began. They told me I could continue teaching. In fact, they made it very clear that the issue was not the past. The issue was publicity. As long as it didn't become public, I could continue doing the job I loved. So that's exactly what I did. And at that point, I was not struggling professionally. I was thriving. I was one of 5 educators selected to help launch Dallas's first all-girls STEM academy. I was in the running for District Top Teacher of the Year. I was in the top 20 of more than 10,000 teachers in that district. I had won awards throughout my career, and my evaluations were excellent. My record was spotless. And on top of all that, I had just started my doctoral program that year. Life wasn't perfect, but professionally, I had never been stronger. Then Thanksgiving week arrived. I witnessed an obviously drunk driver and I called the police. Later, I made a Facebook post describing what had happened. What I did not realize was that one person would take issue with that decision. Within a political community I was involved in at the time, there were some people who strongly opposed involving law enforcement in almost any circumstance. One individual became angry enough to start digging through my past, and he found it. Then he posted it publicly. That's the post I saw while laying in bed that night. The moment I saw it, I knew exactly what it meant. The district had already told me the issue was not my past. The issue was whether my past became public. Now it was public. A short time later, I was called in again, and that's when I was given a choice. I could resign, or I could be terminated. At first, that might sound like an easy decision, but it was not. Because attached to that resignation were documents I was expected to sign. Those documents contained statements that implied misconduct on my part as an educator. Language suggesting inappropriate behavior. Language suggesting violations of my professional responsibilities. The problem was that none of that was true. I had never behaved inappropriately with students. I had never engaged in misconduct on the job. I had never, ever violated the trust placed in me as an educator. I was sitting there looking at these documents that would allow me to leave quietly if I admitted to the things that I had never done. And in that moment, I had a choice. Protect my career or protect the truth. But I couldn't do both. I remember thinking about everything I worked for. The students, the awards, the years in the classroom, the STEM Academy, my doctoral program, the future that I thought I was building. And then I looked at those papers and I refused to sign them. I told them that if those were my choices, they would have to fire me. Looking back, that decision cost me my career, but I still believe it was the right decision. What devastated me wasn't simply losing a job. People lose jobs all the time. What devastated me was losing the career that I loved. I loved teaching, I loved my students, I loved helping young people discover what they were capable of. And almost overnight, I had to come to terms with the fact that I might never walk into a K-12 classroom ever again. Not because of anything I had done as a teacher, but because of something from years earlier that had become a public relations concern. What's interesting is that the public reaction was not what many people would assume. The support was overwhelming. Parents spoke up. Former students spoke up. Current students spoke up. There were protests. There were petitions. There were countless messages of encouragement. Many people looked at my record and asked a simple question. What does this have to do with the teacher that she became? Ironically, the backlash created by firing me was much larger than the publicity they were trying to avoid. And despite everything that was happening, I kept going. I stayed in my doctoral program. I completed that doctorate. I finished with a 3.4 GPA, and I refused to let that chapter define everything that came after it. But the story did not end there, because losing a career and losing a reputation are two very different things. A career loss has a date. A reputation loss does not. Even today, nearly a decade later, if I disagree with someone online, every once in a while they'll Google my name, find the news stories, and post them in an attempt to shame me. Almost 10 years later, the story's still there. It's one search away. And that's one of the reasons I could never realistically return to K-12 education. Not because I stopped loving teaching, not because I wasn't qualified, but because the internet never forgets. I did eventually return to the classroom and I taught at the college level, but I taught under my middle name. Think about that for a moment. After everything I had accomplished as an educator, I felt I had to teach under a different name just to continue doing the work that I loved. And that's why this story isn't really about adult content. It isn't really about education. It's about something much bigger. Second chances. We say we believe people can change. We say we believe people can grow. We say we believe people should not be defined forever by the worst chapters of their lives. But when those chapters become public, our actions don't always match our words. You see it everywhere. People who made mistakes when they were young. People who served their time. People who rebuilt their lives. People who spent years becoming someone different than what they once were. The label often follows them anyways. My label was a scarlet letter. I'm not asking anyone to agree with every decision I've ever made, and I'm not asking for sympathy. What I am asking is a question. Should people be judged forever by a single chapter of their lives? Or should they be judged by who they have become since? Nearly a decade later, that's still a question I'm asking. And it's one that I think all of us should spend more time thinking about.